Hey everybody, and welcome to the Johansson show. It's Kurt, and today I've got one of the owners of Bodyslam Pro Wrestling in Denmark with me, Kristian. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
No, really excited. I think I had probably a couple of tweets like saying you need to start looking into Scandinavia, you need to have a look at Bodyslam, and then everybody I've spoken to so far about Bodyslam is just singing your praises. So first off, congrats on that.
Thanks so much. I mean, it means a lot. It's weird because the whole Scandi Grabs thing isn't even like something that we came up with, and I feel really bad about it because it's being used a lot. Like the term has sort of taken on a name of or a life of its own, and I honestly don't remember like who came up with it. And it was just somebody on Twitter, I think, that came up with it. And I feel like in an interview like this I should give them a shout out or something, but I don't remember. I don't remember who did it. So if you're watching this and it was you, shoot me a DM on Twitter, and I'll credit you after the fact.
No, brilliant. And like Bodyslam's obviously one of the leading promotions in Scandinavian wrestling, and really excited to see how that came to be. But like, why did you want to get involved in professional wrestling in the first place?
It is kind of a strange story because I don't know how. I'm probably dating myself by saying this, but the first wrestling I ever watched was WCW Thunder on one of the Danish television stations, and they only had Thunder. Like didn't have Nitro, only Thunder, which is of course a legendarily terrible show.
Yeah,
And still that was the first wrestling I watched, and it made me a fan, and I got into indie wrestling pretty quickly because obviously WCW died,
yeah,
and then I sort of got into tape trading and stuff like that, which was at the time probably hitting its peak, and then moving on to the DVD era a few years later. But at that point, uh, I played video games and stuff. That was the only way I knew of Stone Cold and The Rock and all the entire WWF roster. So really, I might as well watch IWA Mid South, the old Ted Petty Invitationals and stuff like that. That was, that was as interesting to me as SummerSlam 2001. I think was the first WWF show I watched. So I sort of got into indie wrestling at the same time as I got into WWF, and it was I don't know. It always seemed more interesting to me, maybe because looking back, because it seemed more achievable. It seemed more like something that I could be a part of somehow. Which pretty quickly, I also did get involved through some friends that I met on message boards, which for all you young ones out there, it's like a Facebook group, but it was its own website. And it just kind of started in 2005 was when wrestling sort of started picking up, like to the modern era, whatever you want to call it, that we have now. We did have a few shows, and I can get into a lot of Danish wrestling history if you want, but
that sounds good.
I'll keep it to my own story for now, at least. In 2005, there was a man by the name of Daniel Grønno who got a ring for the first time, a professional ring, a used ring from Germany that he bought and brought up and started running some shows. And at that point, it wasn't trained professional wrestlers. It was guys in sweatpants and t-shirts, and they didn't really know what they were doing, but it was a passion project. And I got involved only as I was the guy. I put up chairs. I hit play for everybody's entrance music, stuff like that. And that was sort of it just sort of became a social thing for me more than anything else for the next maybe 5-6 years. And then, as always happens in all these local independent scenes, I guess, there was a falling out. People splintered off to do things a different way, and And that sort of resulted in me and my brother, who I run Bodyslam with, getting involved with some of the guys that splintered off, and we started training people, because at that point my brother in 2008 had gone to Detroit to get trained.
Wow.
And he came back and wanted to share what he learned. And obviously, when you just come back from wrestling school, you're probably not really qualified to train anybody. But at the same time, is probably the best guy for the job at that point. And of course, he still participated in all sorts of seminars and stuff like that. And at this point, he still trains a lot of the guys, and he's trained a lot of the guys that we use. And I feel at this point, after 10 years of experience pretty much training people, he's one of the best guys in Scandinavia, not even as a wrestler, but just as a coach, as somebody who can sort of pick out, all right, what are your weak spots and what are your strong points, and how do we work with that on a show level, because that's something that we're very very conscious of, is we want to, when we put on a show, obviously we want to give people a chance, wrestlers, a chance to learn, to work, to be in front of an audience, but not at any cost. So we got to remember that the paying customer has to get something that's worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
So that sometimes means doing something to, maybe it's not the best wrestler, so we got to package it the right way, or we got to present it in the right way. We got to do, put them in there with the right people who can help them out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the strengths, and what has made it possible for us to run, is because we've been able to train people to have our own core of guys.
Yeah.
Because obviously, until the pandemic hit, we used a lot of people especially from the British scene, from Sweden, from Germany, and they contributed tremendously to both the exposure that we got, but also to the talent that they worked with.
Yeah.
They obviously, as anybody will tell you, the only way to learn is to get in the ring with somebody who's a lot better than you, and that's been very important. But at the same time, at least from our point of view, is you got to have that core of, you got to have these people that are, they're Bodyslam guys. They're the guys that help set up the ring, but they're also the guys that can deliver the main event, or they can, because we're very cautious about putting people from abroad in the main event every time, because then what does that say about our Danish local talent? And it's it's always a battle, because obviously you got to be able to deliver at a certain level if you're going to have a match that comes after a Speedball Mike Bailey match.
Yep.
And you're probably not going to out athletic Speedball Mike Bailey or Lucky Kid or whoever. But then it's like, I always kind of put it like this, that we're like Memphis.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, where it wasn't maybe so much that it was the greatest athletes, but it's about presentation. It's about getting angles over, getting characters over, and then that'll help sort of level it out to where because when people come to one of our shows, and let's say it's Speedball Mike Bailey, they probably don't even know who he is, but they know who Peter Olisander is, because he's on every show. So even though they're very impressed with the athletic ability of Speedball Mike Bailey, as anybody would be, they also like the guy with the book they probably hate the guy with the book who's always telling them, I'm the champion and I cannot be defeated, and I, who treats his minions bad and stuff like that. So I completely forgot what the question was, but I hope I have answered it.
It was just basically like your insight to professional wrestling, really, and like how you got into it. So more or less covers it. Yeah, definitely.
I should warn you, I'm just brevity is not one of my virtues. So just cut me off if I get rambling.
Nah, everybody always says, "Oh, sorry, I go on tangents," but I love that because as interviews as well, you can only do so much research. You can only do so much what's out on there on the internet. So I love all the different tangents because it tells stories that people can't access anywhere else. And it tends to be when people are going on tangents where that's the best stuff that's coming out. So no, definitely like it's great to learn that history, and it's interesting that you mentioned like the contrast of not putting international guys as the main event every single time, or people may come in and they may not know who Speedball Mike Bailey is, where maybe everybody else in the world does, but it's just tailoring it like, and I'm sure it's interesting trying to manage that expectations as well, where Speedball might be used to being main event in loads of different companies, say in the UK, where he was based for a long period of time, but then come here and it's having to handle. No, you may not be main event here. It's similar to my local company, NJPW. They are a very family friendly run company. They're not one where they don't play to like the internet fans or the smarter fans. They do a lot of camp shows, and then they'll do City Hall. And they had Will Ospreay on one of their shows, and their venue, they had over 1,000 fans, but probably only a quarter of them knew who Will Ospreay was, because those fans. So it's trying to manage that expectations where, and it was our guy Robbie X got the win, and the reason being is because everybody knows who Robbie X is in that arena, and it's interesting the way that you do the same philosophy.
Right, but I think it's easy to get caught up in a Twitter bubble, or to get caught up in a Facebook bubble, or any kind of social media. Twitter is not really a big thing in Denmark. Like it's just not. It never really caught on in a major way. But obviously, Facebook, Instagram, stuff
how
like
come
that.
that is?
One more time.
How come like Twitter's not really caught on? Because like when I've been doing these Scandinavias, I didn't really use my Facebook page to kind of promote, or my Instagram, and I think it's only since mainly even looking and scheduling these Scandinavian interviews, I'm like, right, well, if they're only on Facebook or Instagram, they're gonna search me, and it's gonna be like, I ain't coming on your show. Whereas my Twitter looks more presentable, so I'm like having to manage all three to try and cover all grounds. But how come it's not really picked up on Twitter?
I don't know. It just seems like the only people that I am no social media expert, but it seems like it just never really got traction with just random people. It seems like the Danish people that are on Twitter, generally, not all of them, but generally is, it's journalists, or it's different companies. It sort of never really got off the ground as just a place where you talk to your friends, and I think that's why it never really got going in a major way, because Facebook got really big, and then maybe people just like, I don't know about this Twitter thing, and I gotta use what is it, 220 characters, and it's like, I don't have time for it. I don't know. And I mean, a lot of people on Twitter will complain about Twitter, so maybe it is just maybe it's for the best. I don't know, but I don't know. I generally tend to enjoy it for for the discussion, and there's a lot of things that is just easier to keep up with via Twitter, even though it's always kind of biased because it's different people's opinion on stuff, and then you kind of got to research, all right, what's actually going on with that. But I think it's meant a lot for us as far as having more of an international audience. Maybe that's a strong word, but like more international attention via Twitter, because there's the Twitter sphere of wrestling, and a lot of like you said, a lot of wrestlers, if they have a Facebook page, it's probably not it's not a lot of people following them on there, but then maybe they have 50,000 followers on Twitter. So and we only have 800 followers on Twitter. So if you're watching this and you're not following us, please follow us. And but I think there's just it's a cultural thing, I think, as far as how many people use it. And then at this point, it's just become it's become too much to get into a new social media thing, because it's already like overwhelming with all the different, all the Instagram and Facebook, and you got Zoom has become really popular, Snapchat, there's all these different things. So I think it's just Twitter missed its moment in Scandinavia in general. I certainly know they did in Denmark, and then we use it to communicate with internationals, and I feel like we probably don't sell a lot of tickets, but I think people check out our videos, and we're on independent wrestling TV and wXw now, and all we're on all the different streaming services, and I feel like that's where the audience for making people aware that we're on those streaming services, that's on Twitter. That's not so much on Facebook or Instagram, whereas Facebook and Instagram is probably where we sell more tickets. So it's a balancing act too, because we got to you kind of have to tailor your content a little bit to the different platform.
Yeah.
And how much time do you then put into the one that's where you sell most of your tickets, which is on Facebook generally for us, and then how much do you put into Twitter, which is where where you get in touch with people who want to interview you for podcasts and stuff like that, which is also it's a fun thing to do, but it's also a branding thing. It's also important, so you got to balance it out with everything. And it's I just had a child just 2 months ago, and I just am, if I wasn't terrible at like Twitter DMs and getting back to people already, now I most definitely am. So now I feel like I'm forced into thinking more about it now. Like, when is it important that I do this, and how do I, like, and sort of having more of a social media strategy just by necessity, because I just don't have the time that I used to. And when we do, we just had one of our obviously we're back running shows, but we can't run shows like we used to.
Yeah.
So we're also trying to use YouTube to sort of, because we know there's a lot of fans, local fans, that can't go to the show, and we they write to us, or they write on Twitter, or they write on Instagram, and they're like, good luck, I wish I could be there, either for their own health issues, for a loved one who maybe doesn't have the best immune system, or whatever the case may be, just to be careful, which is also very valid reason. So we put up our full shows from sort of the post-COVID-19 shows for free on YouTube in full, like we would usually do on IWTV or wherever, because we want to let everybody who want to see it, they should be able to see it. And it's already a financially sort of a shaky period, but we're very lucky that we have some very good partners in the venues that we usually run. But actually for us, it's more like 2021 is sort of the real shaky one, because we had some deals in place for the fall, and it's not like it would have been, but because we had the signed deals, and because it's venues that we've partnered with for years, they were very helpful, and they wanted to make it work. And at the same time, planning for next year is a lot trickier, because they don't know what they can expect. We don't know what we can expect. So they don't really want to do anything, they don't really want to put pen to paper on anything that isn't really a sure thing, and wrestling is weird. Right? So maybe if they sign for May, a wrestling show on a Saturday, maybe by February everything will be cleared up, and they miss out on some big band, or something like that. So we're kind of in a holding pattern as far as next year. We've got some tentative dates, but that's really one of the main thing that's really tricky about COVID at this point, is that we don't know when it will be back to normal. We don't know when it might, when things might be shut down even further, as we've seen in a lot of countries, not so much in Denmark, but But in a lot of other countries, there's been much harsher restrictions in the past few months, and wrestling is not going to be normal for years, I don't think.
No.
But it might get back to where at least we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm kind of waiting for at this point, because it's just so hard to everybody's sort of training, and we want to run shows so that people don't get rusty or just want to I'm always kind of afraid that people just, maybe if they don't wrestle for 6 months, they kind of go, I don't think I can do what I used to do, and I'm not interested in spending the time getting back to it, so I'll just kind of drift away, from doing it. Especially because in Denmark it's such a niche, right? It's such a small pool of talent to have to work with to begin with, and it's all people that do it, for the love of it, for the most part, right? Nobody's a professional wrestler to where they make a living from it. So it's something that they can just, they just dedicate themselves to family life and, a real job. And, it's only, and that's why we're so thankful that everybody still, backs it up to the point where we're able to run these shows, because it's just like when we had ran our first show, we had, I think, just a little less than 3 weeks notice that, all right, this show is going to happen. So that was the window that we had to sell all the tickets, which wasn't that much, but still, it's a lot harder to sell tickets now because everybody's been burnt, right? Everybody's had a ticket for something in the past 6 months, and then it didn't happen. So we find it a lot harder to sell the tickets, but also because, wrestling isn't such a big deal here. It's, like I said, people don't know Mike Bailey, and the reason they don't know Mike Bailey is because probably 60% at the very least on every show we have is just a casual fan. Maybe somebody that's never watched wrestling before. Maybe it's somebody that watched it when they were a kid and they kind of ironically go watch it. And just people that like to drink a beer and have a good time and enjoy themselves. And then there's also, there's the guys in the Bullet Club shirts that know what's going on. But that's not where we make our money. Like, we can't make our money on the people that are big wrestling fans. But the people that are big wrestling fans are probably the ones that are gonna, spend the money in these trying times where everybody's, so many people have lost their jobs, future's uncertain, health concerns, all that. Like, who's going to prioritize going to wrestling? That's the hardcore wrestling fan, and that's generally not where we make our money. It's with the more casual fans who maybe this is not the time. So yeah, I got completely away from whatever you were asking again. So I don't know how to end this, but we're very thankful to our crew. Everybody even went out, like even the guys that weren't wrestling. Obviously, everybody that wrestled got tested in the week leading up to it.
Yeah.
But also everybody who was volunteering their help for staff, for ring crew, all that stuff. Everybody was tested in the week leading up to it on their own time.
Yeah.
It's free to get tested, obviously, here. I don't know if it's like that there, but everybody can get tested for free. But maybe you have to stand in line for 40 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So everybody put in that work, and everybody made sure that it was a safe environment, and I feel like that's very important too, because wrestling is such a tiny niche of a niche. Like, there are some WWE fans, and it's getting bigger and bigger, I think, because it's now, wrestling's never really been on television for for long periods of time. It's sort of in little chunks here and there, and maybe it's on for a year and then it's off for 2 years, or maybe it moves to a different channel, or they just switch from WWE Raw to TNA Impact, just from 1 week to the next. And but I think now that with the streaming services and YouTube and video games and all that, that means that there's a lot more people that now can have easier access to it. But it's still live wrestling a tiny niche of a tiny niche. So the people that go to the shows, if they come out from any show, obviously we're not the only promotion, but anybody that comes out from any show, they're going to judge it by, or this is what Danish wrestling is, because nobody really, understands the different brands and promotions, stuff like that. It's just, all right, I was at this show, and there was no social distancing, and everybody was just standing, and no masks or whatever. If anybody does that, that's just wrestling looking bad. That's not me looking like, that's not Bodyslam looking bad. So I feel like that's an important thing too, because again, venues and stuff, we're not a priority so much. So it's very important to keep, go above and beyond to make sure that everybody is comfortable with what's going on.
Yeah.
From the venue to the fans to the wrestlers in question, of course. So that's something that we put a lot of effort into, and that's also why we release the shows on YouTube, is because we want to, we don't want to hide that this is how we run things, and we disinfect the ring and all that. We want everybody to be able to see, or what is this? If I go to one of these shows, what will it be like?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And it's good to see that you are taking like so much care during this, because it is obviously testing times, and like props to you as well. You mentioned you've got your streaming services, but you're still putting the shows out there on YouTube where they're not being really monetized because YouTube got rid of monetizing wrestling.
Right.
And it's good to see that you're still doing that, because it's, like you said, those that are staying at home and those that can't go out for whatever reason, you're not just abandoning them, and you're like, hey, look, we appreciate your support in the past, and we know you can't get there now, so here's our free shows, so you don't have to go subscribe to go watch them and stuff like that. So yeah, props to you on that. I think from what you've said, it sounds like you are managing the situation really well. How many fans are you allowed in at the moment?
We're at the general rule is everybody has to be seated, which is kind of an impractical thing for us, because generally we'd have standing shows. So we've pretty much gone from, generally we were able to have in some venues it's like 300, in some it's 400, and it's pretty much gone down to between 100 and 130.
Yeah.
Seated and socially distanced and all that. And that's because it's indoors, and then there's some different rules for outdoors. But you don't want to run outdoor shows in Denmark right now.
No, especially during this weather as well. Like, it's coming up to.
But it's very, it's very trying. Obviously, when you go from, it's less than half capacity for every venue that we're in, and we don't run the same venue every month. Like, we have different venues, and sort of. Again, because it's harder to draw people month after month, because there's not really those hardcore fans.
Yeah.
Then you could argue that if we do run monthly shows, then the hardcore fans will sort of gradually be created. But that's it's sort of a work in progress.
Yeah.
We want to run Copenhagen more. Copenhagen is really the only city what you might classify as a city. It's 1.5 million people, so it's not even that. It's a country of 5.5 million people, so it's not a big market by anybody's definition. But it's Copenhagen is the best place for us, so we want to run that more often, and we have a good partner there. But it's also one of the more expensive venues, and it's also one of the more expensive places just for travel and parking is a nightmare, and general big city stuff, I guess. But we're trying to make it so that the people that want to go can all go. Like, that's the goal, and we feel like that's, again, because it's harder to sell tickets, that we feel actually like up until this point everybody's been able to go that wanted to go, or that were able to go. And then we want to put something out there for the people that want to keep up with it, and maybe they want to go in a year, and then they kind of still know what's going on, because we try to develop our storylines and angles and everything like that. So but it's always it's just not the same when it's not the same capacity people. It's never going to be the same because the audience is such an important part in wrestling, as everybody's well aware, both from I guess a marketing standpoint. Like word of mouth is still far and away the best way to sell. I mean anything, probably, but in wrestling too, like, and that's including social media and stuff like that. That's very, it's just very important to have that word of mouth where it's a positive snowball effect that keeps rolling, because we can't get, it's not putting up posters, it's not doing Facebook ads or anything like that. It's getting people to bring their friends.
Yeah.
And that's just so hard now, because the government is always telling people don't do it. Don't limit your social gatherings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I totally agree with, and I'm not going to be a any conspiracy stuff here. Like I totally agree with it. It's just very impractical for me.
Yeah. No, definitely
for us. And then we get like 100, 130 people, and then our Copenhagen show just sold out a month in advance. So we're looking into, I don't know when this will be put out, but we're looking into getting an afternoon show for that.
Yeah.
So that, so that everybody who want to go can come. And,
what date is your Copenhagen show?
That's the 14th of November.
Okay. I'll make sure it's out before the 14th.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it's very that's the next show coming up, and that's really the last date that we really have. Usually we'd have our January date, which is sort of one of the big tentpole events as well. But the venue's just not comfortable with I think just generally the whole thing of wrestling is weird, but usually because it's in January and it's a tradition. This would be the 6th year I think we do it.
Yeah.
But I think they're just like, we got to figure out, what is allowed, like when you put the ring in there and you've got to put the chairs in a different way, and we got to work all that stuff out. And I know that's been, because I've done that for other venues, and it's a pain to get everything, from the fire department, from the police, I've talked to lawyers about stuff, because there's certain guidelines, or what do these guidelines actually mean when you put a ring instead of a stage, and the crowd comes for, like, the crowd is on different sides of the ring too, like, is that allowed? All kinds of stuff where it's like sort of open to interpretation a little bit, so you got to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that you don't get in trouble after the fact. Yes. So I understand that the venue maybe doesn't like that, and but it's disheartening, because again, it's the uncertainty of it that sort of bothers me more than anything. Maybe we should talk about the past a little bit to just have some happiness on this show. I feel like this is depressing.
Well, I was going to go into that then anyways. Like, your first show, I think was main evented, was it? Did you have Michael Fynn and Tank as the main event for that one? Yeah. So when you've split up and you've kind of gone your separate way, yourself and Soren, you're doing this Bodyslam. What was that first show like in terms of crowd and people accepting there's a new company? Like you said, wrestling's not really big. It's, some people still see it as weird. And here's this second company coming in with Bodyslam. I know you had Chris Ridgway on that show as well.
Right.
So like, let's have a look at the history of like Bodyslam and how you've grown to be what I'd probably consider the leading company in Scandinavias.
I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm gonna just give a free plug to Gothenburg Wrestling for this, because I feel like that's one of the companies. It's kind of hard to find anything on video, but if you ever get the chance, like this is my personal recommendation. Obviously, you should go to Copenhagen and go to a Bodyslam show because that's just amazing. Like the crowd in Copenhagen is just second to none. But I feel like one of the most overlooked companies, maybe in Europe, but certainly in Scandinavia, is Gothenburg Wrestling, GBG Wrestling, which is run by Steinbolt, who's also wrestled for us, one half of the Swedish elite, who's obviously I don't like him because he's Swedish and we don't like Swedes.
Whoa!
That's a thing.
I've just told you my family heritage before we started recording, and now you're dissing us.
It's one of those things. I don't know if you have anything that compares to it necessarily in the UK, but it's just one of those. For hundreds of years, like Denmark and Sweden sort of traded land.
Yeah.
Right. So Denmark would invade, and then part of Sweden would be occupied, would be Denmark, and then 50 years would go by, and then Sweden would win it back and stuff like that. And now it's just like, whenever we face them in football or any sport, it's just like it's the enemy still, but in a friendlier way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just this. Anytime we have a Swedish team, pretty much you just have to say this guy's from Sweden and he's just like the biggest heel.
They're the heels
naturally, like for no reason. And it's the same thing when Danes go to Sweden. It's just it's just the easiest thing. So I don't mean anything negative by it, but I think
it's like England and Scotland here. Like if you're from Scotland and you're wrestling in the UK, in England, it's so easy just to be that Scottish heel. And if you're English going to Scotland, all you have to do is go out with an English flag and you're going to get booed out the place. So yeah, I get it.
It's always, I think it's a fun thing because it sort of makes it a little bit lighter. Like there's real history there, and there's in the past it was very real, and we don't want to ignore that. But it's just still, we're friends now, and we've moved on from it. And I think that's very. I think that's sort of that you get something out of that. The common history of it is sort of, even though all the common history is pretty much bad.
Yeah.
We both sides know it, and both sides sort of embrace it. And I feel like that's something that wrestling does really well. Is that it takes something that's real, but everybody's in on it, and then it turns it into something that's enjoyable for everyone instead of making it this negative thing. But yeah, anyway, that's like it's sort of the hidden pearl is Gothenburg Wrestling. And there's also, just because, since I'm plugging them, I should also plug the other companies that I feel like could do more with video, probably, because I think it's probably going to be hard to find it. But there's Stockholm has its own promotion. There's Svensk Wrestling Syd, which I'm sure nobody can pronounce, but it's Swedish Wrestling South would be which is in just across from Copenhagen into Sweden is Malmö, which is another. I think it's the third biggest town probably in Sweden, and they have every like bigger town in Sweden has its own promotion, whereas in Denmark we just sort of run different towns at different times. So that's kind of a different way of looking at it. I would also recommend you check out Fight Club Finland. I'd also recommend you check out Norwegian Wrestling Federation. That's even, I think with Finland, it's even beyond Scandinavia. It's just the Nordics at that point. Yeah. So that's, for anybody who's curious, that's what you should, if you want to check out more, obviously check out Bodyslam first. Obviously you should go check us out on different social media platforms and follow us on every one of them. But then go and look at the other companies. But yeah, I feel like anytime somebody says, that we're sort of the highest profile Scandinavian company, that's kind of the biggest compliment that we can get at this stage in the game, is because sort of when you look at the Danish scene from 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I feel this is on me, but I feel like the biggest personal I personally feel like the biggest growth that there's been and the biggest improvement that there's been has been over the past 5 years,
Yeah.
when Bodyslam has existed. And to get back to the first show, on the first show, it was the most stressful thing that I've ever done, I think, pretty much, because it was very controversial and there was a lot of negativity about it. There was a lot of sabotage. There was a lot of just bad stuff,
Yeah.
which always happens. I know this is not at all a unique story. This is the same story in every local indie circuit. It happens everywhere. It's always the same story. For the first show, I feel like when I look back on it now, it's terrible. Like, it's no good. I actually feel like the main event's pretty good. Like Tank and Michael Fynn, I feel like that holds up. But everything else is just no good. But in a way, I feel like that's a positive thing, because it means that because so many of the guys that were on that first show are still on our shows now.
Yeah.
But they've just improved a lot. And that was sort of the goal when we started, was that we feel like there's some raw material here. There's something to work with. This is not perfect. This is not this is not something where it's just going to be, just put some matches together and it's going to be great. But there's something here that we can work with and that we can help improve. And that was to be sort of the Scandinavian super indie thing. Like, that was the goal. It was never so much to be, to bring in foreign talent and sort of be, because that's also very possible. Denmark's, Copenhagen especially, is pretty good for a lot of flights from different airports. So it's actually pretty easy to fly in people from a lot of places. But that was never the goal. The goal was to have a company where people could grow, but also where people could be showcased to, because we felt like that's actually, like, Michael Fynn has been, he's been the guy. He's been the one that we sort of built everything around.
Yeah.
And that's because he just has a natural charisma about him, but he also has a nice work ethic, which is also very important. And he's been somebody who's stepped up every time we've asked him to work with the foreign talent. He's the guy that's been, he's been delivering. And as a result of that, I feel like he's very, he's very well placed in all of Scandinavia right now. He's one of the more well-known guys.
Yeah.
And if you know a wrestler from Denmark, it's a good chance it's Michael Fynn.
Okay.
But even then, I'm just gonna put him over some more. But even then, he's just somebody who's super into getting into everybody else's matches, everybody else's storylines, and he wants, he's like, maybe can I put this guy over, or can we do something with this guy, or like, he had the belt for 600 and something days, almost 2 years, and really part of the reason why he didn't lose it was just bad luck. Like, we had it planned for him to lose it a few times, and it just never happened because things happen. But he was always like, should it be this guy or should it be this guy? Like, I think we can do something with this. And I feel like that is sort of the core of everything that Bodyslam is, that it's everybody helps everybody else improve. And then the fact that is, as you said, that is what you might consider sort of the most high profile, the most, the top Scandinavian company or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a testament to sort of the solidarity of everybody. Like, that's everybody's collaboration, everybody working together, that has made that possible. And that's why I think that's such a nice thing for you to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, definitely. And just from you speaking there, it reminds me a lot of, I've been looking into the Southeast Asian wrestling scene and interviewing people from Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, Hong Kong, and a lot of them have been where it's like everybody just gets together, everybody's trying to strive together and work as a collective unit to grow the wrestling scene. And you can see that is what's happening with Bodyslam. And then I know from people that I've spoken to, a lot of people said one of the big differences with Bodyslam and why they've become so successful so quickly is because of your marketing and the way you market's helping the growth, and it's making it look. You're like you mentioned some of the other companies in like Sweden, but one thing you kept saying is not sure how accessible it is in terms of videos and stuff like that. But you've marketed it so everyone around the world essentially can, if they're interested in Danish wrestling, they can check out Bodyslam. So I think that's why that's one of the key tools, that solidarity. But I think again, the way you guys have marketed your company that's helped you grow as well.
That is something that we've put a lot of effort into, because that's one of, again, the word of mouth is one of the most important things, and that only happens if it's something that people want to share.
Yeah.
It only happens if it's something that, if you go to a show and you take some pictures, it looks cool. It's not just some gymnasium with fluorescent lights on and a ring in the middle, and the graphics are made in MS Paint, right? Yeah. It's got to be like, so that's part of that was part of it too, was we wanted to make it so that even in Denmark, and that's part of it, is that in Denmark it's just, wrestling is even weirder than it would be in the UK, or it's a nerdy kind of thing no matter what, but in Denmark probably even more so. So we wanted to make it so that it's something that people would want to share, from the people that participate to the people that watch it.
Yeah.
So it's something that that we've put a lot of effort into, which we've been lucky enough to where my brother's very good with video. He puts together all the video packages, and we've been able to do a lot of the editing ourselves, which is also why sometimes it takes 4 or 5 months for a show to come out. And my day job is as a graphic designer, so I can do a lot of that, the postering and the match graphics and all that. So that's it's always a work in progress to kind of figure out how to make one show stand out from the other and stuff like that. But it's definitely something that I feel like is, again, because this is kind of Memphis, it's probably more important sometimes than the work rate or the technical wrestling inside the ring. Not to discredit that, not to say that that's not important, but the only way people are going to come watch it if it looks fun. It's not if they're not going to come if they just think, oh, I'm going to see a good technical wrestling match.
Yeah,
that's my philosophy anyway.
It's a lot like the saying, like, if a tree falls in the middle of a forest and nobody's there to hear it, did it fall?
Right.
If you have 5-star classics and you could have the greatest wrestling match of all time happen in the venue, but if the market isn't there and you're not getting the people in, did it ever happen?
Right, and that's Dave Meltzer gets a lot of flack these days for, if it happens in the Tokyo Dome, then it's just a different rating and stuff like that. And maybe there's something to that, but I kind of think it makes sense in the way that if something happens at the Tokyo Dome, it will just be more important than it would be if it happened even at Sumo Hall or another big venue. There's just something that adds to it, and it's more likely to be something that's that's remembered for a longer period of time after and stuff like that. So I feel like, while it's not the most important thing, because I've seen really good matches in front of 100 people, but there is a certain importance to making people aware, and the more people are aware, the more people care, and the more people care, the more the reaction is going to be there, and then the wrestlers are going to, just like at a concert or at any event, the more energy they get from the crowd, the better the performance is going to be, and it's just going to be a dynamo effect. So everything, and that's the thing, right? Everything sort of pieces together. It's not just that you do good marketing and then everything else is going to fall into place, obviously. But if you don't do good marketing, then probably things aren't going to fall into place. Yeah. So that's sort of the philosophy on that.
So to look at the history, like you mentioned, Michael Fynne, I believe from the research I was doing, I think it was around 623 days his reign was. But obviously,
Probably.
Tank was the first champion. And what was your thoughts about going with Tank as that first champion? Like you said, Michael Fynn was kind of like the person you felt you'd building the brand around. I know them two was having their matches. They had tables match in the main event at the first, tables match in the second. But then Tank, was it Ridgeway that Tank faced for?
Yes, that
Yeah,
was the Ridgeway was at our first, I think, 3 shows,
yeah,
and yeah, that was on purpose. In that, when we first started out, Michael Fynn wasn't so much of a name, but he was sort of like him and Tank are like we do storylines of them being mentor and mentee
yeah,
and going way back, and that's all true. Like he literally met Michael Fynn met Tank when he was 13 years old, and they've known each other for a long time, and he's taught him most of his philosophies around wrestling and around the work ethic that he has, and his philosophies as far as you gotta put other people over, and can't just be about you, all that stuff. So part of it was that we knew that we needed somebody that was just the easy pop for the first champion. We needed a baby face who, no matter where we went, because we were still so young as a company, we didn't
yeah,
really have any established venues that yet. So it just had to be somebody that, when he came out, it just worked. And that's what Tank is. And he's a guy in a gi, I don't know, how do you pronounce that, he's a martial arts
yeah. It's a game.
garb.
Yeah.
He's because he's a legit jiu-jitsu guy, and he just Danish shoot fighting champion, Danish jiu-jitsu champion.
So him and
So,
Ridgeway makes sense.
and then of course he uses a choke slam for a finish, right? Because that makes perfect sense. But he's got something, like he's whatever it is, he's got it. Like he comes out, people have never seen him before, but they just love Tank. And I think part of it is also his name is Tank, and he just comes out and he just beats people up, and it's cool, right? And he's like 6'4", I think, and he's like So even though he doesn't look like a prototypical wrestler so much, he just has that aura about him that means that he's the guy.
Yeah.
That you can, like, as an audience member, you can trust this man to deliver a good performance somehow.
Yeah.
And he's been wrestling since 1994, so it's actually before the modern era. He was trained by somebody. I guess every European country also has a Hulk Hogan knockoff, and we did too. And his name is Asbjørn Ries, who's actually like an incredible athlete. I think 6'8", like 300 pounds of muscle, just like a power lifter, strongman guy who then went to Hollywood to train, and could still do like an acai moonsault at that
Wow.
size, right? But in my personal opinion, not very well trained, and very much all about himself. And so he turned into, but he trained a few people, sort of, kind of,
Yeah.
because he wasn't much of a trainer, but he put on shows because he was on television as the commentator for WWF and then later WCW for a period of about 2-3 years,
Okay.
where he became a hero to children, and he was able to put on a few shows where the draw was just come see me.
Yeah.
And then there are some other guys in sweatpants and t-shirts who just did terrible wrestling, and there's video of it too. So that's so that was sort of where that started out. But that's just to say that he's been wrestling for a long time. So he's somebody that also had the routine, and he's also somebody who, when in 2007 or 8, there was a documentary on Danish wrestling, which just came a few years too early. I think, to where it wasn't really ready to be showcased yet. But Tank was one of the guys that they showcased in that. So he's also sort of not famous, but he's like, him if you've seen that documentary and stuff like that. So he had a few things going for him where he was just the most established guy. So again, we went with the easy pick for that. But the goal was always that then, we also know that we're going to get a great match whenever Michael takes over. So that was the philosophy on that, was to sort of have a safe start, and then roll it into to what we wanted to do for the future.
Yeah. So after the 623 days of like Michael Fynn, it then goes to Peter Olisander. Like, what prompted that for Peter to take over and become champion, defeating Michael Fynn?
It was he was just sort of a natural at wrestling. He's done a little bit of MMA as well, and he started out with us after, I think maybe we'd been running for like a year and a half, and he was always like a huge wrestling fan, but he didn't really watch Danish wrestling at all. And then we came to his hometown, and he was in the crowd, and then he just thought, man, that's cool, I want to do that. And then he got in touch, and within a year he was on the shows, and he's just got his head on straight, and he's just easy to deal with, and he works hard, and he also is somebody that I think for months before the actual change Michael Fynn was talking about, it's got to be that guy. So it was just the natural progression, because at some point, it's fun to have the long title reign, but you got to do something else, because otherwise things get stale. So we wanted to do something where it was a really strong character, because Michael Fynn had been a really strong character, and we felt like that was the strongest character at that point.
Yeah.
And also sort of a breath of fresh air, like, because it's something different from the trap rapper character of Michael Fynn to this sort of cult leader figure. And again, it's very, very much a caricature, like that. All the characters are very bold, because it's got to be to the point where when you come out and it's in a new town, people never seen you before, they still, they believe that, all right, I get what that character is about. And that's hard to do, but Peter's just really good.
So what prompted the quicker title change? I believe it was Rick Dominic, and then it went back to Peter.
Right. That was actually it was a change that we wanted to do a year prior, but Rick got sick and was in hospital for a few days, just around the time when we had the show where we planned to do it. That's one of the things that happened, like I said, where we actually had planned for Michael to lose the championship, and then it just didn't happen. And it was a story that we wanted to tell, because Rick is somebody who's been wrestling for 16, 17 years, and he started out, it's the old story of starting out as a high flyer and then just getting hurt all the time, and then getting into sort of a different style gradually. But he's also somebody who just really connected with the fans really from day one for different reasons. In the beginning, it was because he was this high flyer who did incredible things that nobody else could do, and then later it's because of a strong character, and he had never really gotten his due. We felt like there was a story left to tell about this, all the sacrifices that he'd made, and then finally he gets the gold. And it wasn't so much, the plan was always to put it back on Peter, but it was also we wanted to give the story some gravitas to where he had a little bit of a reign. I think he had the belt for maybe 3, 4, or 5 months or something like that, and then he lost it. And then that was actually the start of the real story of this formerly beloved babyface who he fought for 16 years to get the championship, and then he lost it, and he can't get it back, and it breaks him that he's not able to that he thought he had reached the pinnacle, but in actuality it was actually the worst thing that could have ever happened to him. So it was a story decision. Obviously, we also felt like he could carry the main event matches, but it was very much a story decision that we wanted to do this as a nod to him. We wanted to have him as one of the, again, he's a veteran guy of the scene, and when there were 30 people watching wrestling in 2005, he was there, and he's still there now. So it was also sort of a tip of the hat to a lot of hard work. And that's the thing about wrestling titles, is in the end it's a prop, and it's not real, and you didn't really win it. But at the same time, it's kind of something where you can look at it as, an Oscar, or it is an accomplishment to be given that responsibility, and that acknowledgement of the work that you've done. So it was a story decision, but it was also an acknowledgement of hard work, and earning that situation. I feel like he and I feel like it was something that he also wanted, as far as, he felt like he needed a change of pace for his character. He was getting a little bit stale, and it was for those who haven't seen it, it was like a greaser gimmick.
Yeah.
It was a gimmick where you feel like that's never going to work. And I personally thought that's never going to work, but it did. But it also, after, I guess, 4 years, it was getting a little stale, and he really wanted to make a change, and we felt like, all right, we got to have a catalyst for that.
Wow. Like, it's been really interesting, like, hearing back, like, some of the history, especially because I know Tank and Michael Fynn are now the tag team champions, and you've said, like, they've had this mentor-mentee and been going at it, and now they're the tag team champions of Bodyslam, and it's refreshing to hear how much, like, it seems from this, like, it's all about storytelling, and you like to build those stories, you like to have the solid characters, and you like everything to mean something. And to me, that's my favorite, like, form of professional wrestling. I'd went to Chicago for All In before AEW was a thing,
right?
And they had Okada on the show, they had Rey Mysterio, and all these great guys. But the match that stood out to me was Cody Rhodes and Nick Aldis for the NWA World Title, because it was just storyline. And to me, and I think that's what hooks people a lot more as well, where it's like, well, what's he going to do now? Where does he go from here? They're going to check in again. And I think that's just my opinion. Like, I'm a fan of all different type of wrestling, but I always appreciate a good storyline the most, I feel.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when I watched All In and just thinking, man, they should have put that match on last. Because it was by far, that was the match that everybody was there for. And when you look at it on paper, if you just look at it as a matchup, Cody versus Nick Aldis, it was a pretty nothing match.
Yeah.
But then the whole build-up, and I think even the people, like, from when I hear from people that were there for it, and it was just like they didn't even realize how much they cared until they saw those two standing across from each other in the ring. It was like, because as far as, like, if you're a generally at All In, for instance, you're probably, you're consider yourself smart.
Yeah.
You consider yourself somebody who appreciates good wrestling, and that's what you're there for. But even so, there's just something to that story that they told on, and it was on YouTube videos, right? It wasn't even on television. It was really a groundbreaking match, and a groundbreaking, I think, and the culmination of that match was the emotional highlight. Maybe even maybe the start of the match was the emotional highlight.
Yeah.
But that match was the emotional highlight of that show, more so than even the post main event speech about all the stuff that they did, and how they they changed the world and all that, which is all true, but it's still that's the NWA, the title that's been irrelevant since late 80s. Still, when the story is told right, even the smart fans who didn't like Nick Aldis and who thought, why is he even on the show and all that, when the story is right, that's what matters most. Because because the work was there too. Like if you watch the match, like the work was there, but it was the story that really that made it. And that's the same thing with, if you watch even Tanahashi matches, New Japan stuff, where people have this preconceived notion of Japanese wrestling being all about the work rate.
Yeah.
But if you like, it's the stories. It's always the stories, and it's always, it always ties together with something else that's happened before. And I mean, the match with Seth Rollins versus Ray, like the eye match,
Yeah.
right? That was actually a pretty great match, but because the story was so weird, that's just
Can't
like
appreciate it.
everybody shit on it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like the story of it. But like if you just appreciate like the wrestling, then it's like it's a good match. So yeah, I totally understand that. You know, the even if like, and that doesn't mean that you can't like work rate and cool spots and stuff like that. But ultimately, everything is storytelling, like in the human mind, I think, and wrestling included.
I think it's one of those where you could have a full show. For example, like I do watch Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, especially the Battle of Los Angeles, but I can't watch night 1, 2, and 3 like back to back. Sometimes I won't get the full through the full show, and it'll be like, right, I'll watch second part of this show tomorrow or something like that, because there's so much going on. It is very similar. Whereas you could have, again, the same amazing matches, but if you had the story told, it's different because it's engaging a different part of your brain. You can appreciate all the athleticism, but it's appreciating a different part of your brain to where it's telling a story. So then the second match could be very similar athletically, but because they're telling a different story, that's what you're focusing on, and then you focus on different parts of the athleticism and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely agree in terms of like, to me, it's just all about the story. I can appreciate the athleticism, but it's normally the story where I'll be coming back to watch it.
Right, because you can watch a great match out of context.
Yeah.
And then if there's no story, then you're just going to be, that was good, or I enjoyed that. But if there's a context to it, like if you, I would argue if you watch the All In match, you'd probably go, if you have no context for it, you'd go, I need to know who these guys are, and I need to know what are they talking about on the commentary, and like what happens next, like, because it's clearly very important. So now what happens to the guy who lost? Like how does he deal with this? So I think, and it's the same thing. That's what hooked me with New Japan originally. It was like I'd been watching it on and off, and then I watched in, I think 2013 probably, there was an Nakamura and Tanahashi match.
Yeah.
And I forget what show it was. I think it was probably in like November, maybe. It was like late 2013. It was just like leading up to Wrestle Kingdom in January. I think I remember that. And I was and the story of that match was just so, like, those two, I just feel like always just, they really connected. Like they just had the same philosophy and they wanted the same thing, and it just perfect almost every time. And that was sort of the gateway for everything else that I then watched after that. I feel like that's the biggest thing too with New Japan. And I know we're not talking New Japan, but like in general, like just to bring it back to what we're doing in New Japan, generally they'll have these different flavors of matches, where there's the brawl and there's the technical one and there's the high flying cruiserweight thing, and that makes you appreciate an Tomohiro Ishii match, and then there's an Okada match, and it's totally different. And there's a Hiromu Takahashi match, and that's completely different. And we try to do that as well. And of course, with more limited talent and stuff like that, is it's a harder thing to do, and especially with most people being trained in sort of a similar fashion as well.
Yeah.
But we went to just before the pandemic hit. We were in Germany with our friends at West Side Extreme Wrestling at the
Yeah.
16 Carat. And I felt like that was one of the things I took away from that was how well they put that, because that's a tournament of generally not a lot of story, but a lot of talent and a lot of intrigue with different matchups because of, styles clashes or because styles would mesh really well.
Yeah.
And when you watch those cards, it's very well put together as far as, all right, then there's an Eddie Kingston, brawl, and then there's a lucha match with Bandito, and you get the picture.
Yeah.
And then that was one of the things that I took away from that was how much that matters, because because a couple of times I think it happened where it was just like two lucha matches or two high flying matches right after one another, and you could just sort of feel that the energy is just different for that sometimes, because it's easier if you just go, all right, here comes Eddie Kingston, all right, that's a complete change of pace, this is a different thing, all right, palate cleanser, it's a new thing now, and we try to do that as well. Obviously we don't have the level of an Eddie Kingston to come out and cut a promo, but we try to do and then there's a promo thing, and then there's angles and stuff where it's a conscious decision on our part that we want to, all right, you've seen this match, now it's a different thing.
Yeah.
Because wrestling is, it's a variety show, and I think it's dangerous if it's the same flavor, all the time. And that's but some companies do it well, like a Dragon Gate is probably kind of, it's not all the same style, but there's a lot of the same style going on at the shows, and it still works because then there's, if you follow it, there's certain storylines that you can follow, and there's interpersonal relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So again, the story kind of can if you are conscious about it, that can work with a lot of wrestlers that maybe have the same style, but yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the wXw, like the Carat Gold weekend, and you had 3 of your guys on the Now Showcase.
Right.
Was you guys involved in the booking of that, or was it wXw thinking, hey, we want to use 3 of your guys?
Yes, that was us. We decided who would come, and we decided how the match would be put together. But they decided the match order and how much time everybody got. Like they had sort of the big overview of the show itself, and then every promotion that was on it sort of had its own. You do whatever you want, kind of. And I actually feel like watching it back. And some people disagree, but I feel like we didn't really play to our strengths with that match because it wasn't story heavy enough.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, it's like one of the things that people react to, one of the things that people get is when Peter Olisander takes the book and he reads the book and he gets, oh, this is great, I'm going to do this move now.
Yeah.
Right? Because they haven't seen that. But there's a lot of other stuff where it's just like, well, it's a wrestling match, and and it's guys that I don't know, so everybody's polite, and I don't think it was a bad match, but I think again, story is just so important, and character is so important, presentation is so important. So I feel like we didn't really actually work to our strengths in that. So that's one of the things that you take away from those kind of experiences is always just what can you do better next time, and what can you change, and what can you incorporate into what we're doing, and that was part of the reason why we were even there, was obviously to learn as much as possible. And they were very, very gracious as far as allowing, especially me. I was even able to help out with the filming and the production of the video there, and it was just, I mean, for somebody who's used to having 3 camcorders running around, it was just a completely different beast. So it was just super interesting to see like how they did it and when they did certain things, and the preparation for it and stuff like that. And there's a woman that's sort of their head of video, whose name is Katja, who's just the nicest, most helpful. Like she's super stressed, obviously, on show day, because she's got to have everything going for 3 days in a row, in this huge production suite that they've got. but she's just so helpful and always, like, I'm asking her, like, what mic do you use for this thing, and she's just like, oh, let me tell you, and this, and but we used this before, and this might be fine for you guys to use and stuff like that. Like they're all of the wXw guys are just really helpful. Like I have a good relationship as well with Tassilo Jung, who's one of the owners of the company, who's like, sometimes I'll send him emails with stupid questions, and he'll just he'll actually write back and like give me all kinds of advice, and just like, they're just way nicer than they have to be. Can't say enough nice things about wXw. Just as people who want to help the European scene in general, and who want to to showcase certain things, but who also just want to, even when there's nothing in it for them, they want to give a boost, and they want to share their experience, so that we don't make the mistakes that they maybe have made in growing to where they are now, because obviously it's completely different. Everything for what they do is completely different from what we do, just because it's done on such a larger scale, and they have to consider so many other things, from partnerships with the WWE network, which they're on now, and music rights and all kinds of stuff, where we have a more simple setup. And but I think one of the things that we do share, and that we also talked about at Carat, is it's super important to have that core of local talent, which is also proving important for them right now, because usually they'd fly in a lot of people from the UK and or even from America,
Mexico, America, yeah,
right, from everywhere. And now they still run shows, and they have to rely on that that core of guys that they've been that really has been the backbone of the show all along. But now it's like, those are also the only stars that you have, and I think that's very interesting to watch. I'm watching their no crowd or limited crowd shows that they're putting on. I'm really interested in the Catch Grand Prix that they're doing, where there's a match every day on their streaming service, which is, for somebody who's trying his very best to keep up with the G1, I think that might be an interesting way of releasing it. And that can only be done now because it's this specific COVID era that we're living in. So I think that's very interesting. I'm going to be following that very, very closely, because I think that's just, that's a very innovative way of doing it. And it's easier because it's bite-sized thing. Like, you just got to watch a match every day, and if you missed some, you just catch up on Saturday or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as much as I love the G1 or the Best of Super Juniors, I'm not gonna lie, I don't end up watching the full thing, because I can't dedicate 3-4 hours a day on top of other stuff that I'll watch. Like, I'll be doing my interviews, editing, got to keep the missus happy. Like, I can't always dedicate that. So it might be, right, this is a match that I'm interested in, I'll go check that one out. But a match a day is easier to get by. And so I want to take it back to, like, with Bodyslam. Obviously, the now showcase, you chose, I believe it was Peter Olisander, Emeritus, and Michael Fynne. Like, who else is, like, not to put you on the spot, well, yeah, I am kind of putting you on the spot. Who else on the like Bodyslam roster that's coming through that you think actually they're going to be interesting? I know Easy Lovers are getting quite a lot of hype at the moment.
Right, Twitter loves the Easy Lovers, and they're great guys, and very entertaining. And I think it could translate, like, a lot of their popularity, I think, is because they're funny.
Yeah.
And when they talk, it's like they're funny, and they're three guys who are friends in real life. So they also really, they just have a chemistry that you can tell on camera that they like each other, and it works. I also think another tag team actually is Randers Penje, or Randers Pain, which is a play on a certain wine cooler that stereotypically they drink a lot in the town where the team is from. And I know you talked to Sander about it. He's one half of the tag team, along with Adonis. I think they could. I think they could be. I think there's somebody that everybody should check out just for. I think just very athletic tag team and really fun and just a lot of energy. And I think pretty much any show you put them on, anywhere on the European circuit, they would work. I think.
Yeah.
I also think, especially like there's not a lot of female wrestlers in in Scandinavia in general, but I think that especially I would highlight that you should check out Betty Rose, who's just the nicest person, easy to get along with, but also again the hard worker. Like she wants to put on the best match ever, and there's nobody that has a lot of experience in Scandinavia as far as the female wrestlers. So it's always kind of she along with Sixt, who's probably the most experienced women's wrestler in Scandinavia. I know she's had a few dates with wXw as well, a year or two back, I think. And then there's also Alice Inc., who is just like tattooed all over her body, and like she's a legit kickboxer.
Okay.
Who's also just coming up, and also like very green, but very very determined.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really want to do whenever we get back to running more normal shows. I want to run more women's shows, and I want to showcase the women so that hopefully we can get more women involved, because we don't have any Danish. Like, they're all Swedish.
Yeah.
We don't have any Danish women that really train with us. So we really want to establish that. That's a goal for, at this point, maybe not 2021, but maybe 2022. I mean, because it's going to be necessary. Like, we did a show, all women's show, last year, or was it the year? No, it was last year. And obviously a lot of we had to fly in, I guess seven women from the UK at that point, because that was just the logistically easiest thing to do. But that's one of the things that I really want to run more all women's shows and sort of showcase the women more on the regular shows, because that's really I feel like that's all of those three women that I just mentioned. I think all could be outside of Scandinavia and work on shows and be successful. But because they're in Scandinavia, then it is isolated. It just is, because everything is impractical, especially if you got to go from Sweden. You got to fly pretty much no matter where you want to go. So I feel like that's one of the next goals, is to showcase that more, and to hopefully be able to heighten the level of talent, but also the exposure, to the point where maybe we can. I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like we could is one of the most important things that we could contribute to the scene, is if we could get people to be booked outside of the scene, like to the point where maybe they aren't even available for our shows anymore because they're so busy. Like, that would be the dream. Like, for any, that goes for male or female. If we could be sort of a springboard to the point where it's you get outside of the bubble of Scandinavia.
No, it's really refreshing for you to say that, because again, through like research and other chats, I know how toxic the Danish wrestling scene had been once upon a time, and I know the things you're doing, you're making it a lot more positive, and it's good to see that you're not like, nah, these are our people, we're keeping them so we can put on the shows. You've just said, even if it meant you can't book these people because they're working elsewhere, like, that's a great attitude to have. And the more people are flying the coop, and I think we've seen it with NXT UK. Obviously, they're looking across Europe for all their talent. And I spoke to Mila Smith. She's a female wrestler based in France, and she was saying, like, wrestling scene in France wasn't really given that much attention. But then Amel exclusively signs with WWE, and now she's getting so much media, she's getting so much coverage, and wrestling's being oh, actually, like it is something attainable and something serious, and it's helped boost the independent wrestling scene in France because of Amel's involvement with WWE. Do you think something like that would happen with the Danish wrestling scene if one of your talent got the opportunity to wrestle for NXT UK, and then comes, because they're this big global commodity, then comes potential TV shows to try and make it accessible and all that sort of stuff?
I really think that's one of the things with being from such a small country of, like I said, 5.5 million people, is anytime anybody is good at something on an international level, that gets a lot of attention. So I think if we could get somebody from Denmark signed or to be successful at a high level, I think that would mean an incredible difference to how we deal with venues, how we deal with media and PR and all that stuff. I think if and again, it would also mean, like you said, it's like, oh, it's an attainable thing. So I think it will also help a lot for, you know, potential new wrestlers and new trainees, because they would, at this point, if you train in Denmark, probably what your goal is, like, I want to be on the big shows in Copenhagen, and I want to, in front of 400 or 500 people, and and it's cool. But the real goal, if you want to get the real hungry wrestlers,
Yeah.
it should be, I want to main event WrestleMania, or whatever the thing is now. I don't know if that's the thing anymore. Maybe it's want to main event All Out, or that's to where they feel like, because I think the reason is that right now Scandinavia is so isolated, and if you train here, it's like, it just seems like, well, it's not realistic if I want to go elsewhere. It's not, but I would like to be on these shows, and I want to wrestle as much as possible, and then maybe I can get booked in Germany at some point, and I think that's the perception of it, and I think just like with Amel, the perception can change in an instant if there's somebody that sort of acknowledges it. I think that's the thing about wrestling in Scandinavia in general, is one time in 2018, I want to say, maybe 2017, WWE has only been here once, is the point.
Wow.
They visited one time and didn't come back. So that's also sort of sending a sign, to the scene or to the fans here, that this is like, they don't really acknowledge this as an important market.
Yeah.
And I think that's too bad. But it is what it is, and it's a business, and they want to, and they did fill up a pretty big stadium. I think they drew, I want to say, 8,000 people. Yeah. I think was the number, which is good, but apparently not good enough. Again, because Denmark's probably kind of impractical place to go, I would imagine. If because in Germany you can go to a bunch of different places, with UK you can go to a bunch of different towns, right? And then you can go to one place in Denmark, and then you got to go to Sweden, go to another place, you got to go to Norway, and you got to cross all these borders, and you got to, it's I bet it's way more important, or way more difficult than in some of the other markets. So I understand why it's, why they probably need more, bigger crowds for it to be worthwhile. But yeah, I think that's the acknowledgement of, if you're Danish, or even if you're Swedish, or somebody from Scandinavia, and you're signed, I think that's sort of is a benchmark that can really push wrestling forward on everybody's behalf.
Yeah, definitely. Like, hopefully that will happen, like, and more people will be like, oh, actually, like, I can see wrestling more, and oh, she's come or he's come from this company, I'm gonna go train there. And the more people are going, hopefully it's gonna be like that factory where product goes out, new products come in, and hopefully it can be that that cycle to try and build it up. And I think, again, you're still very early in your career, essentially, like, as a company, still very early days. And I think for what you've been doing already, I know people were impressed with the triple threat at the Now Showcase. And again, the marketing's very good. You're getting on these streaming services. So I think that's only a positive for Bodyslam, which again, it's still early in the career for not only, it's not as if you've just jumped into, say, the British wrestling scene whilst it's got a boom. So, oh, here's a new company. Oh, they're using the people I like. It's just closer to where I live. I can go there. So it could be easier for them to be successful. You're building this success and you're building this relationship and getting the branding right in a scene that was struggling. And since you've come in the 5 years, 6 years, it started building up and up and up and up. So I think it is a testament to what Bodyslam's done so far. And again, I've said it in quite a lot of my international. If people are listening and you're watching Raw and it's 3 hours long and you're complaining on Twitter for the full 3 hours, maybe just not watch it. Go over to one of the YouTube shows or have a look at wXw's streaming service and go watch some of the pre-COVID shows where even if you just watch an hour of it, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But don't try and just open your mind to more possibilities out there. And I think these sort of interviews where I'm looking in Scandinavia or Southeast Asia, no disrespect to my local guests in the UK and stuff, but they're becoming somewhat of my favourite ones because, again, wrestling's passion. I'm addicted to looking at all these different companies and scenes, and it's really interesting to see how all these different countries, they'll have their own interpretation of what professional wrestling should be, but there's still something there for me. So definitely go check it out. So again, Kristian, where can people find Bodyslam to watch?
You can find us on YouTube, which you just search for Bodyslam Wrestling. I'm pretty sure we come up. I think it's /Bodyslam DK Wrestling, I think is the URL. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. If you want to watch us, you can watch us on the wXw Now service. You can watch us on High Spots Wrestling Network. You can watch us on Power Slam Wrestling Network. You can watch us on, maybe there's more, but there's certainly also, and this is the one that I will emphasize, IWTV.live, where if you type the promo code Bodyslam, you will get 5 days free. And not only can you watch our stuff, you can watch all of the best independent wrestling from the UK, from there's Riptide on there, there's all kinds of Chaos, I think, is on there. All of the American indies pretty much are on there. So even if you find out that maybe Scandinavian isn't for you, there will be something for you on that service. And of course, with every service that I've mentioned, when you watch certain promotions, you support those promotions. So it's also a great way in these trying times to support wrestlers that you like and companies that you like. So I would certainly encourage you to do that, regardless of whether you think Danish wrestling is your thing or not. That's it.
Brilliant. So make sure you do go check that out. Go make sure you follow them on social media, and if you're watching it and you're liking what you tweet it out there. Again, we've mentioned how social media is used with Facebook and Instagram, but I think Twitter's the most, it makes things spread a lot further. So make sure you start tweeting, maybe retweet GIFs or videos or any of the shows that are up there, and just try and promote the wrestling. And if you enjoy it, tell one of your friends, tell them to go check it out, because it's going to be something different. And if there is anybody you're watching and you think they're cool, let me know. I'll reach out. I'll try and interview them, and we'll learn more about Scandinavian wrestling together. So, again, Kristian, thank you for coming on. I've really enjoyed the chat. I think we've been going for about an hour 35 here, and I could have kept on going and going and going. And I had in my head, I was like, right, could I do an easy break to where it'd be part 1 and part 2? But I thought, we'll have a long episode, and we'll just have to try and do it again and talk more wrestling.
I'm certainly up for part 2 anytime.
No, brilliant. So everybody, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit subscribe. And again, go subscribe to Bodyslam on YouTube. Go follow their social medias. Check out Scandinavian. This is Kristian. I've been Johansson. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. Friday morning.